Hello again, everyone. Welcome to our little YouTube channel here. Of course, youtube.com/Jerry Strauss. If you haven't come to our channel, we've got all kinds of interviews and features here covering the world of TV, movies, music, all other forms of entertainment as well, talking with just the coolest people on earth. And this time out, no exception, of course. She is one of the most multi talented, accomplished, and diverse entertainment professionals that you ever want to meet on this planet. Um, and her name is Ameenah Kaplan. Ameenah, how are you?
I'm good. I don't know if I can live up to that intro. I was somewhere between like dusting my shoulders off and just being I don't know. It's called not wanting to wait tables, Jerry. That's really all it is. Like or
Well,
rather I
look,
should say just being pretty bad at it, because there's a skill to it that I just don't possess. So
and we talked about this off the air. We spoke a while ago for the audio version of the Laugh Track podcast, which you can still go out and check out at the laughtrackpod.com. But speaking to you today anew, so to speak, and looking at your resume anew, I am reminded once again of just all the different cool things, all the lives you've led already, all the cool things you've done. And I can't wait to talk about them all over again here now that the world has shifted. Last time we talked, I believe it was very much just the very onset of the pandemic where nobody knew quite what was going on, but your world had kind of been shut down for how long we didn't know at the time. That seems like 30 years ago now, doesn't it?
Huh. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it does seem like a while ago, but in all honesty, that pandemic was long. And
Yeah.
I was busy during it. I was I wouldn't say lucky. I hustled, I hustled like as you do because I wanted to direct. And so and I felt like I had a better chance of like, working if I just put myself out there than collecting unemployment. So I was just going to try and work first, and then if I couldn't find work, then yes, I would collect. But so I
Yeah.
was very busy, and I was like kind of in full stride of directing when we came back to the Lion King, and I had to put aside a few projects in order to rejoin the Lion King tour. But yeah, it was a long time, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but the good part is we're able to reconnect here on the show and
Mhm.
lots of upgrades here. Last time we spoke, I was sitting in my car recording some stuff. So we're on the right track, at least on our end. It sounds like on your end as well. Um, we're going to go a little bit out of order because I know a lot of people will come to this video, will come to this interview knowing you best from your role of Val on The Office. And since we last spoke, I think that the show it's gotten almost another whole new life since the explosion of Peacock and people binging it on that network. Um, anew again and in a whole new way and a whole new platform, but also because Peacock has absolutely flooded YouTube with all these different compilation videos promoting The Office. And I think those videos have taken on a life of their own. I mean, I certainly have been caught up many a day in just watching these 10-minute videos, compilations of Jim and Dwight or the best of Robert California. And I'm sure you pop up in many of those videos as well. Have you felt like a new buzz around the show and your recognizability from it?
What a good question. Honestly, it's I have to say it's just kind of been this sort of consistent wave for me. When
Mhm.
I cut my locks off, I became much less recognizable as Val. Like it used to be sort of across the room, across the restaurant, in the grocery store, whatever, but you
Yeah.
can't tell anymore from behind. So people can still recognize my voice. Apparently, I have a recognizable voice. But it's I just have like tons of gratitude for just even being remembered at all as a part of that milieu. And but yeah, it's been kind of a consistent wave for me. Occasionally I still get recognized in person, but we've all been in our houses.
Mm,
We've been kind of out of the public. And
yeah.
as the resident director for the Lion King, nobody puts two and two together unless they're talking to me, you know and
Yeah.
then they'll put two and two together. And then of course if I'm out with somebody more famous than myself, like if I'm hanging out with like, yeah, just a more famous cast member or something like that, then it's like, oh, there's Kate Flannery. Oh my god, and that's also Val. Like it's more like that.
Must make people's day to
Yeah.
just to think that you guys still have some sort of a bond. People love that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you work with people, and like we're in the same business. We have the same interests, and we have the same problems. We understand where each other is coming from. So lots of our friends are entertainment industry
Yeah.
professionals. Yeah.
So, you talked about the layoff, and specifically, of course, that was going to affect a show like The Lion King.
Yeah.
Any live theater, any live entertainment, really at all, was essentially shut down for the
Yeah.
most part, all over the place. Um, what has it meant for you, coming back to the present, to come back into action? Like,
Mhm,
has it lived up to the expectation, I guess, and the hype inside your
mhm,
mind,
mhm.
just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then it finally happens? Is it back to normal? Is it better, or is it
It's
just
definitely
different?
not back to normal. It's totally different. We are in a new reality. We get tested every day. Like,
Mm,
like we get a nose swab every day. We travel with three COVID specialists, two nurses, and a COVID coordinator. Like
wow.
Disney is not playing with COVID. We have to wear N95 masks everywhere, inside the building. We are advised not to eat in restaurants, and if we do, there's certain protocol about the type of restaurants that we're looking for in terms of height of ceiling and airflow and open windows. Otherwise, we're eating outside. So, no, it is not the same. We are not interacting with the public the way that we used to. We've changed certain blocking in the show so that the dancers and performers are not in the house. The audiences are, we're requesting that they wear masks. There's all kinds of policing of the audience to make sure those masks stay on. It is
Wow.
not the same. However, it's pretty awesome. And
Mhm.
the thing that's been so fun, I guess, and so refreshing and so rewarding is how appreciative the audiences are. And I had some friends that were like, "Oh, theater's going to die. It's never going to come back." And I never felt that way. Not throughout the entire pandemic. I was like, "No way." As soon as we open again, and not just Lion King, the big dogs, but theater. As soon as theater is available again, people are going to come because it's where we gather. It's where we tell that story at the end of the day. And I just had no doubt that people would come back, and they have. And in fact, with a show like The Lion King, which is much more now like Christmas Carol or Rocky Horror Picture Show in terms of its knowability, how well known it is in our diaspora, people know what's going to happen. So
Right.
as soon as they see Rafiki, they cheer. As soon as the high antelope comes on, or the low antelope, they cheer. As soon as they see the giraffes, they cheer. So, and as soon as Zazu comes on in Circle of Life at the very end there, they cheer. And so it's been kind of awesome and renewed and revived, and like it's elevated now because people are like, you know what? If we took this for granted, we certainly don't anymore.
Mhm.
Because being able to get out of the house,
Yeah.
go into that dark room, and have performers tell you a story is, it's top five value for what we're doing here as humans, after like shelter, food, clothing, pissing, and procreating. I'm not kidding.
That's a
You know,
t-shirt.
I'm hey, write it down like trademarks, bank. But I'm not kidding. Like, and then came theater because after all of those necessaries were done, the
Yeah.
the tribe sat around the fire and somebody told the story of the day. Somebody regaled the group with what happened during the day, and that's theater. So we've always been doing it. We will always do it. And so the way the audiences have been cheering for theater is very, very refreshing.
Yeah. I think that a big part of it, even beyond the love for a show like yours, which of course people want that familiar comfort of going to
Mhm.
see a show they love like The Lion King. But even beyond that, I think it's just, there's that need for something communal, for people to watch
Yeah,
things and be entertained
yeah.
all side by side together. Um,
It's a witness. We are the entertainers, like the performing arts. We are the witnesses, and we are telling you, we're holding a mirror and we're saying, this is what you look like. This is what you did. This is what matters to you. These are your morals. These are your problems and your conflicts. This is what you're doing right. This is what you're doing wrong. And people are like, that's good information. And they have been since the beginning. It's like I said, the tribe sitting around the fire. It's like, and then old Uncle Fred, he's got one leg, and everybody falls out because Uncle Fred has one leg, and they know it's really difficult for him to chase buffalo or whatever it
Right.
is. And it's like, yeah, we've been making fun of ourselves and holding a mirror to ourselves since the beginning. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's so cool to see it continue. Look, I mean, we could go all over the place just talking about everything from The Office to everything you've done. I want to ask you about a couple different things though that I revisited about your career, about your life. Now, follow me here because I don't think we ever talked last time about the fact that you trained when you were at the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University.
hmm
You trained in the experimental theater wing.
hmm
Now, I'm always interested to know when people go to school for what they eventually will fall into or what they have a passion for, what their idea, like whether they have a specific idea of the direction their career will take.
yeah,
Like, and how that's changed over time. It feels like going into experimental theater, and to be honest, as a layman, I'm not even quite sure exactly what that means. It
sure.
scares me a little bit, but it feels like a very specific choice. Like you just knew this was whatever that entailed was something that you were really interested in following, as opposed to non-experimental theater.
No,
I guess.
I wish.
No.
I wish I had that kind of forethought. I came up in very traditional musical theater and
Mm,
Shakespeare and musical theater, very traditional. I went to a very, traditional performing arts high school where they gave you ballet, tap, jazz, modern. We had the comedy show, we had the drama, like very, very traditional theater. The problem was I didn't get started in the arts until a little later than my colleagues. So I was just kind of a cut up and a kind of cuss and boop. I was a boop up and and just I was just kind of all over the shop. But I think that there must have been like a core of some kind of talent in there because I got into that high school, which
yeah.
turns out like that high school has many, many wonderful alumni. Amongst them is Stacey Abrams went to my high school. She was a year ahead
Okay.
of me. So it's like we had that kind of high school. Dorian Missick went to my high school. Omar Dorsey, who's on Queen Sugar, went to my high school. Like, Kelsey Scott, who is Emmy nominated for The Walking Dead, went to my high school.
Mm,
So it's like Erica Ash, who was Nala on Broadway, went to my high school. So it's just that. So somehow I got in amongst those people. So then when I went up to Tisch, my first thought, Arthur Bartow, the I guess he was the student body president or whatever he was there, student body president. That's probably not what his title was, but like it is probably the dean. The dean. That's what they call those big wigs at colleges, the deans of Tisch. He said, Mina, where do you see yourself as a student, as an artist? Like what studio? And I said to him, I see myself in Stella Adler because I knew about straight ahead Stanislavski style acting. And so I was like, Stella Adler. And he
mm,
looked at me and he was like, experimental theater. And I
hmm.
went, experimental theater? And he was like, experimental theater. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I rolled into experimental theater on the first day, and these kids had their shoes off and they were in sweatpants, and they were like, they were connected, and their chakras were aligned, and they were ready to rock. And I was like, what is this weird stuff? Like, why aren't we wearing nice clothes and learning how to wear makeup and like standing up straight and like an outfit and like trying to talk in front of a
Right.
camera or whatever? And they had us rolling on the ground, and they had us like, yeah. And so at the time I was like, okay, again, I think I was an affirmative action kid. If you really want to know the truth, I think they were like, we need some more black people. She's one. She auditioned. She's got some talent, but she's
Mm,
got zero training. Like I had 2 years, 3 years of training or whatever coming into Tisch. Not
right.
enough. Not enough. And there was something there. So couple it with affirmative action and some measure of talent, and I got into Tisch. But I got into the experimental theater wing. which you may think would be like, what is that avant-garde weird stuff you're doing? But I have to tell you, when we got there, first of all, it was a movement-based studio, a dance-based studio. So everything we were doing was from and through our bodies. In the way that you learn to play violin, you learn to play your body. So we were doing things like contact improv, which was a dance form that was created in the 60s. And we were learning it from Window Beavers, who was in the original workshops in the 60s. We were
Wow.
doing Kristen Linkletter voice technique, which was a revolutionary voice technique for actors that was somewhere in between acting vocal technique and singing vocal technique. Because again, ours was a movement and physical based studio. We were doing kinesthetic awareness. We were doing yoga. We were doing massage. We were doing all kinds of body awareness thing. We were doing Alexander technique. We were doing Butoh. We were doing like all the stuff, you know, coming over from Europe, like all any we were studying Dada. We were doing like all this incredibly interesting work. And people were looking at us in the early 90s like we were the weirdos in experimental theater. But
Mm.
then something started to happen over the course of the years was that ETW, Experimental Theater Wing, was turning out the best actors
All right.
all across Tisch. You would see, because we were the most interesting to watch, because we were freaky and we would stand interesting. We would stand on our head, we would acrobat, and we would do a cartwheel, and we would just approach it from a different way. And suddenly, ETW actors were in demand all throughout Tisch. Then
Mm.
you notice that the techniques started to leave ETW and get into the rest of the school, and
Mm.
people started to leave musical theater and come to ETW.
Hmm.
Now, this is what happened, I think, over the course of, you know, say 1990, and I got to Tisch in 92. So it predated me because they were already on that course, because the kids that were older than me were already the hot actors in school when I got there to Tisch. But
Yeah.
so let's say 1990 through like 2000, that decade was the decade that the experimental theater wing became legit. And
Yeah.
the people that came out of that studio were, again, we were taught to create our own work. We were always taught that, like, that our business was never about just auditioning for a job. It was always about creating the work. So ETW, we had a bunch of playwrights, a bunch of choreographers, a bunch of director choreographers. Like, we were
Wow.
encouraged to do that from day one.
That
And
feels
so
very ahead of its time because
in
that's the prevailing spirit these days, right?
so get this. So 1994, Stomp comes to New York from Europe, from Britain.
Mhm.
1992, or 2 years before that, Blue Man came. Right
Hmm.
around that same time, Cirque du Soleil came. And then a few years later, Lion King came. These are four of the biggest physical theater shows in the history
Yes.
of physical theater, and they got their launch right there, right in the 90s. So
Hmm.
ETW ended up being a training ground for physical theater people. So when I
Wow.
was so when I was 19 and I was in ETW, and it was so freaky, and I was just like a little confused because again I came from that traditional background, and I was a little, and the work was hard, was what was happening, was that it was demanding of me to rip my soul open in a way that I wasn't quite ready for. And frankly, probably would not have had to do in other studios that were more based on, you know, just a different technique. But
Mhm.
ETW was about getting in there. And I was like, you ain't getting in nowhere. So when Stomp came around, I jumped ship and got into Stomp. And then
Mm.
come to find out, my training at ETW was perfectly aligned with what was happening in Stomp and in physical theater and in theater in America at that time. So
Yeah.
now I was doing it, and suddenly all of my training started to make sense. I started to swear by that ETW training, and we started to spread it. The people who had been in ETW started to spread it. We started to say, hey, dance isn't just these techniques. Dance is also all this freaky weird shit that we're doing,
Yeah.
you know? And then cut to 25 years later, so I go off, become a choreographer, I choreograph 40 different shows. Somebody else goes off and becomes something else, they do a whole bunch of different shows, they direct a whole bunch of different things. Somebody else goes off and becomes a teacher at a university down in North Carolina. Somebody else goes off to LA. So we spread out
Yeah.
over that 20 years. And so now 25 years later, you're right, that's exactly what you see, is the techniques of that school of thought the physical theater, ETW, avant-garde, weird, because we never liked those terms. That was always the stuff that people were saying. What if you ask me what we do cutting edge, spectacle based, populist, like badass theater that provides the actor with a living wage, which was something that most theater can't claim, because every single show that I named is still running right now and
Yeah.
provides a living wage and health insurance to the performers, because that revolution, that physical theater revolution, changed theater. And everybody had to get on board, because if you weren't doing Broadway, but even Broadway, you can see the influences of physical theater in The Lion King, in the Spider-Man show, in everything, in Tarzan, in all the shows, you can see the influence of physical theater. You know,
Uh,
and so, what is experimental theater? Experimental theater was right there at the beginning of what we now call spectacle or populist, or what I call sometimes hybrid theater. So
yeah.
that your question.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an amazing story. Just you use the term revolution. I mean, that's
It
the
was.
definition of what a revolution is. You
It
guys
was.
just took over and changed the entire game in a widespread way.
We sure did.
Um, so I gotta ask you now, I mean, just looking back on the beginnings of that, like, what kind of a bond there must be between so many of you who were in on the ground floor and kind of started this thing growing all over the place. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of, there's a powerful bond between those of you
There
who's
is.
yeah,
Yeah,
who
because we were
still
the alternative kids.
yeah,
We were the kids that weren't the actor, singer, dancer with the great hair and the pretty smiles and going, we're going to go to New York and book all the Broadway shows. No, we were like the drummer, dancer, actor, which was me. We were the acrobat, Shakespeare, poet. We were the artist, breakdancer, aerialist. Like, we were all this like hodgepodge. We were the, whatever. We were the music producer, singer, dancer, whatever we were. And we created our own thing. And so, yeah, we are a totally tight community. And now that we're older, we're passing that on. And again, one of the things that I see a lot is our techniques in the mainstream. Like, I see these
mhm,
young dancers coming up and they are trained. They come out of, Horton, they come out of Ailey, they come out of all these different places, and you can see the sprinklings of experimental theater and the physical theater world in their training. And so we're paying it forward now, and we're inviting them to think different, think outside the box. Like, don't do what we did because we didn't do what they did.
right.
Stomp, Blue Man, Cirque broke the rules. So break the rules. Don't do what we did. Do something different. Do the next thing that is gonna revolutionize and make necessary theater. So that people come and they go, I have to see this. I gotta pay them and I gotta go see it live. You
It's,
know.
it's amazing how labels like that can be so misleading, like the term experimental, and so time stamped into a moment of time. It makes me think about alternative music, and I remember what alternative music used to be when that title meant a lot. But it wasn't long before the stuff that we were calling alternative music wasn't the alternative anymore.
Right.
It changed everything around it and became the norm. I mean, that's I mean, I would think that is a quality direction that any
Yeah.
sort of art can take.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, instead of, because sometimes we get in this head where, when people get old, right? And you start to be like, well, the music sucks now, and everybody, what are these kids doing? And, the moment I remember this, I don't remember exactly what age I was, but I remember it was my early 30s. And one of my friends was like, ugh, this hip hop, like, ugh. And I just had this light bulb go off, and I was like, okay, we are not 17 anymore. We're not 25 anymore. We're like 31, 32, whatever it was. And I was
Mhm.
like, you sound like those people in the 50s who were like, what is this rock and roll? And I kind of made this like, it just washed over me. Like, it was just like, okay, I'm never going to be that old person who looks at the kids and goes, what are they doing? We did it better. Because of course we did it better than the adults, because we were the kids. So if we did it better than our parents, then please trust me, We may talk about the millennials or whoever, Gen Z or whatever they are, they're doing it better. Do you understand TikTok? And it's like, and we're not on TikTok like that because that's not our thing. We did independent film and we did physical theater. We gave the world like Tarantino and Soderbergh, and we did that. And we
Mm.
gave the world Stomp and Blue Man Group. We killed it in the arts. And and now it is time for it to shift forward and move on. And it cannot stay with us. It has to go to the kids, and I hope I'm making sense.
No,
I'm
you
passionate
absolutely
about
do.
this.
I have a theory that a lot of a lot of people, they have this window of time that's 8 to 10 years. It's high school, it's college, or whatever they're doing in those early adult years. That's the time in their lives when they're smart enough to appreciate art, and they have some of the time that you need to be able to take in a lot of it. And
Hmm.
that's the time when they decide, like, that's all the stuff they're just going to compare everything else to for the
Right,
rest of their lives.
right. They're
Because
stuck in a moment. It's like that guy that can't give up his Letterman jacket.
right.
Because he was a
Yeah.
star in high school, honey. Or somebody that can't change their style because that style was what it was in the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s. Yeah, it's like no, you can keep your style like whatever, but like I think it behooves us to push the needle forward and not become those people who are like, what is this rock and roll?
Mm,
And because it's coming whether you like it or not, and you adapt it for the better. It's like you're happy that alternative music becomes the mainstream because that was the intention. It was, hey, look over here, we're doing something different. And
yeah.
we looked and we liked what we saw. So we left the mainstream and we came over there.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. And then somebody will be like, it's too popular, I'm gonna go over here. Okay, we're gonna if you're awesome, we're gonna come over there too.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I don't think we've ever done this before, Amina. So we're gonna have a little bit of hopefully it's a little bit of fun. Like, I looked at your resume and some of the things that you've done, which again, mind blowing that you've made all these different appearances and all these different projects, done all these different things. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you about, because we've talked about your acting. Where did the drumming fit into what you were doing when you were in school? Because is that how what you were doing in Stomp? Did you uh,
Yeah,
enter the show as a drummer, and was that
yeah. On on my
was that a
tombstone, yeah, on my tombstone it'll say drummer.
okay,
Because
okay,
that's what I am and who I am to my core
before everything else,
before everything. And it took me a long time to know that
Mm,
because I never studied drums really. Like I didn't go to school for it. I took some drum classes in high school. Maybe I'll break that down. But like, you know, drumming, but it took me until probably my mid to late 20s really to realize that the first thing I did was play drums. And I was beating on things from my earliest memory is age 9, you know, and maybe I was beating and tapping on things before that. No one has told me. I don't remember. But my earliest memory is age 9. And then just beating on the desks at school. Then I was just like beating. I learned my first groove on a drum set when I was like 12.
mm,
Bullet the Blue Sky by U2. And I was terrible because I had no training, no support. My parents were like, what are you doing? Stop that. And they enjoyed telling me to stop that, and like so when I was 13 I made my first pair of drumsticks out of like some balsa wood that they gave us for some shelves in our lockers. I was like, this is a stick, it's about this big, it would make an excellent drumstick. So I got one
mm,
of my dad's kitchen knives and I chick the end, painted the end red, and people wouldn't believe this story. And then my sister was like, oh no, trust me, there were red marks on everything in her bedroom and everywhere, like, yeah, because I trying to play with little balsa wood sticks when I was like
right.
13, and still just in any chance I got, and I was terrible. Years go by, and so by the time I got to Stomp, you bump into a drummer here and there, and a drummer sees another drummer, and there's a brotherhood and a sisterhood there, there's a fraternity there.
Mm,
And I think I'm banging on something, and a drummer would pull me aside, and it would be some guy you would never even know. Like, the drummer that I'm thinking of, I met him at the Model UN in high school. I was a delegate, yeah, because I was a nerd, right? So I was at the Model UN, but I was one of them nerds. I had my drumsticks. I was beating on everything. By this point, I had real drumsticks, and I was, I knew how to read music, and I was learning stuff. But I'd never been taught drums by a drummer, like a pro. So I'm beating on the floor, and I just get a tap on my shoulder, and it's this guy. It's just a guy. And he's
Mm,
like, come here. And I'm like, okay. And I am literally like a 16-year-old high school student at the Model UN. And
yeah.
so I go down, not kidding, I go down into the basement with this guy.
Mm,
Yep. Didn't even think about it. He was like, I'm a drummer. I want to show you something. I'm not kidding. Turns out maybe he's the custodial staff or he's building staff. So he's got one of those little offices like that's in the basement of a building, and all
mm,
his little stuff is there and the time cards are there. He's the building operator guy, but he's a
yeah.
drummer. And he had a drum pad sitting there in his office, and like, oh, it's gonna make me emotional thinking about it. I just hadn't thought about this, but it's like, he like grabbed me. Oh, I'm gonna get emotional thinking about it. But and he taught me shit in that basement. He taught me some shit. And he was like, look, here's how you count the meter, and here's how you count odd meters, and this is, how to count in four, but I'm gonna teach you how to count in threes, fives, sevens right now. And I was like 16 and my eyes were like googly, and he just wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I still have that piece of paper. And
Wow.
if I had my drum books here, I'm on tour, but if I had my drum books here, I'd grab it for you and show it to you because I still have it. So that was my drumming experience. Like, drummers would just grab me. So I think they must have been like, okay, she's crap, but there's something in there. And so Stomp for me was, the poster said they were looking for drummers who like to jump around and dancers who like to beat on things.
That seriously?
So yeah, like legit. Like, so my friend took it off the wall and gave it to me and was like, "This is you." And so I went and auditioned. So I was for Stomp. I was sort of the well-rounded thing for Stomp, and I had a good career in Stomp as a result. Being able to play cool parts in Stomp because I was a drummer, a mover, and an actor. And I
Yeah,
ended up doing Luke Cresswell's role. Luke Cresswell's the creator of Stomp. I ended up doing his role, which is called Sarge. And yeah, and those guys taught me everything I know about drumming, everything. And so
unbelievable.
on my tombstone it'll say drummer, even though I make my living as an actor and now as a director. And I've made money as a drummer. I've played with really cool people,
Yeah.
big and small. I've played with really cool people, so I've made money as a drummer. But yeah, that's my temple, my salvation, and I don't monetize drumming. If
Mhm.
somebody pays me, or if the gig comes along, if I'm gonna do the Grammys, I'm gonna do MTV Music Video Awards, I'm taking it. Of course, I want to do the MTV. I want that. I want to be like, I did that. So I'll
Sure.
take that money. I'm not like, no, 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 don't pay me. It's like, no, I need that rent money. But in general, I don't monetize drumming. It's just something that I do. I just came today from playing for 3 hours today. So
Mm,
yes.
amazing. Yeah, I mean, and let's not understate it. I mean, you've worked with Rihanna, you've worked with Macy Gray, you've worked with Allison Porter and Adam Lambert, Taylor Hicks, a huge list of people that Leslie Odom Jr., Blue Man Group you mentioned, just
Hmm.
on and on and on. You've played on Oprah, Conan, the Academy Awards, the AMAs, the Grammys, the Tonight Show. I mean, you've kind of done. I want to say you've done it all, but to your point, I don't think that there's really an end game for you. It's just something you're going to do continually in your life, which is really cool to have something like that. That it's not about I'll do it if I can make enough money doing it. It's just always going to be a part of your life. That's a true passion.
Yeah, it is. That's why I say, like, it took me a while. That's why it gets emotional for me, because it is the only thing that I actually do is play drums. And drums beat me every day. I will never be as good as the drums are. And so it's humbling, and I'm probably a better director than
Mm,
I'll ever be a drummer. Drumming, but drumming is like this. it's this, this like mountain that I'm constantly trying to climb, and it knocks you back, and you fall off, but if you got the right gear, you just kind of swing back onto the right, and it's just like, but it will, I'll never be as good as the drums are ever.
Unbelievable. Talking about a mountain to climb and talking about doing big things, let's just hit on some of the other things that people may or may not even know that you did. I mean, it's mind-blowing. You're part of the Avengers world, the
Yeah,
MCU, the Marvel world. Uh Gamora's mom, her mother, we see first in the flashback in Infinity War. Is that something that you still feel the repercussions of? Because that
yeah,
is, that'll live forever,
yeah,
and be as vibrant as relevant to fans of those movies,
yeah.
over time, forever.
Yeah, I feel like I really got lucky with that one. So I'm like when it comes to dance, I didn't have that technical ballet training, but what I was good at was fighting. And so as soon as I got into martial arts, I kind of found my physicality in that way. And so my dance form, my choreography lives through martial arts a lot, and it lives through music a lot. So it's very rhythmic and very shape based. It's like very, from because lots of martial arts.
Mm,
So I think, the generation right before they started looking at women like me to be in those kinds of movies. And I was right at the tail end. So I auditioned for a lot of Marvel stuff
mm,
because I know the casting directors. They're very cool, and like, they just always reach out because I think they were really trying to get me in there. The thing was, I had already kind of shifted my focus to directing, and so my body and my conditioning was nowhere near where it needed to be to really get something in the Marvel universe, like to
mm,
really do it. And like again, my focus wasn't there. I know that I'm a better director than I was an actor. And so I was just, you got to focus, otherwise you get distracted. So I auditioned for a bunch of things. And when Gamora's mother came around, I was so honored and so happy to get it, because it just felt like, wow, like right before I was like, okay, I'm going to go be a director, I got that thing, like, I'm an old school martial arts fan. I'm a Saturday morning kung fu movie watcher because I'm Gen X. We grew up on that. Like,
sure.
I'm an old school, just get in there with the martial arts and the superheroes and the comic books, and so it was like so many American kids a dream come true to be in a superhero movie. And that's really all I can say on that, is just gratitude, 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 gratitude for my 30 seconds. And also gratitude to the Russo brothers, who, I got on really well with, and they brought me back to do, I'm credited in Infinity War and Endgame as a reader, as well as Gamora's mother. And
Hmm.
but when you say reader, it doesn't really do justice to what they let me do, which was basically, I got to be on the green screen stage with Thanos, with Josh Brolin, and I was playing Gamora because Zoe Saldana was busy with Avatar, as you do in Australia. So that was her. She got that hit. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I'm a director, but I did get to be Gamora for all of the scenes with Thanos in Infinity War, and a couple of them in Endgame. And so every time you see Thanos talking to Gamora, that was me. When he
That's amazing.
when Thanos throws Gamora off the thing and she dies, Josh Brolin threw me in the room, you know? And so to me, like, I am so fulfilled by that experience. I'm so grateful and so fulfilled. Do I think, like, would I have liked a shot to really be one of the badasses? Hell yeah. But those
Mm.
girls are 20 years younger than me, and like, and my focus is different.
Sure.
They deserve what they're getting. I'm so proud of us. I'm so proud of us, and they're so beautiful, and I look at them and I'm just like, get it, everybody that's working, everybody get it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm in my lane. I love this lane that I'm in, and I feel like the sky's the limit for me in this lane. But yeah, dream, that's like bucket list dream come true, to be in a superhero movie and to wear the makeup and to do the stuff and to do the green screen and or the blue screen. It's not even that. It's like it's a motion capture craziness. It's the biggest show ever, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah, one of a kind.
Yeah, it was the biggest show ever, the most expensive movies ever. And so they felt expensive.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. The technology and just being immersed in it. I got to work with all these badass A-list celebrities and, and just chill, and it was chill.
I would have been like, "Where's the catering? I got to see what this looks like."
Craft services is always good,
Yeah.
and like, because we fought for that. So craft services is always good. I give love to every craft service person in Hollywood because they work their asses off,
Mhm.
So craft services is always good. What the difference, where you see the difference is twofold. One is that obviously you got A-list celebrities, but the environment that you're in, you cannot believe the technology. You
Mm.
cannot believe it. You're just like, oh my god, like the camera that we were being shot on like is flat. It looks like an iPad
Hmm.
because it's all motion capture, so it's all computerized and programmed and all this different stuff. And like we're able to see kind of a previs of the backgrounds like on a huge screen that's to the side we're like in a sort of a space, it's like
Wow.
huge sound stage with pretty much nothing in it and all these cameras around this empty space. And in the space, maybe there will be like a couple of mounds or chairs and stuff that represent you walking up a hill or walking down or whatever, And then the cinematographer is on a camera that's like this big and flat. It's like Minority Report. You cannot believe it. You can't believe it. And you're wearing like these incredible motion capture suits and you go and you do all the photography and they take a picture of your body in all these different ways so that so that they can graft Gamora onto your body.
Yeah.
And so and I look to my left and I see the previs of me as Gamora, and I'm just like, oh shit, and I don't have any desire to usurp Zoe or or to be in that, to do that. I
Right.
have more of a desire to direct that. I have more of a desire to get on the other side of that and understand that technology and lead my career in a direction, where because I think big as a director. And so I was much more interested in chatting with the director of the motion cap studio that brought in all of the, so it was just like awesome.
Yeah. That's
It was
amazing.
impressive. Yeah.
That's so awesome. I know all of you out there are watching and you're like, why aren't you talking more about The Office? We want to hear about The Office. So I got to ask you, I have to ask you one more thing about The Office. And we've spoken before about your love for Craig Robinson. Of course, he worked together a lot during your episodes there. And it was that whole, will they, won't they, and him having a crush on you and finally a relationship developing. And then towards the end, looking like maybe reality had settled in, and what we weren't quite sure how happy you guys were together anymore in the end, which I've always said is one of my favorite things about that storyline. And only on The Office could you have this pursuit that lasts so long, and they finally get together, and then in the end, he's like rolling his eyes at the whole thing. Because that's life sometimes. That's
Yeah.
that's the way
Yeah.
it's not always a fairy tale ending. But looking back, what are some of your favorite moments? Like thinking back again about those Peacock compilation videos. If they were doing one that was just about you guys and your storyline, or just Val's time on the show in general, what are some of your favorite moments that you had on the show?
Yeah, I really so there's this drummer, the drummer who's in the wrong band, Steve, and I forget his last name right now, but he came on the show and he was drumming. He's the guy that flips the sticks all around and he's like really crazy when he drums. He's an
Okay.
amazing drummer. He's an amazing drummer. And what was memorable about that was when that video first came around of him going viral in that yellow suit and he's flipping his sticks, people were trying to make fun of him and all the drummers watched that video and we were like, he's dope. And then to be on the set of The Office and to know that this guy was coming in to be like, a guest star, that was one of my most favorite episodes. And I was biting my tongue the entire time because Brian Baumgartner's a drummer as well. And he got to drum on the episode. And I'm just standing there and I'm just like, God damn it. They didn't write that into my storyline. And like, I don't even know if they know I'm a drummer because again, that's that's who I am. And it's not necessarily, I don't necessarily advertise that or whatever. Certainly not in the acting world. So that was a very memorable experience. Just like being on set with that amazing drummer and just being a drummer. I'll never forget having to swim in Robert California's pool. Like
Yes.
I mostly won't forget it just because like it was the thing that was like, okay, when it's your first opportunity to cut your locks, you're cutting them because you're gonna die. Like if you're on a boat and you go overboard,
Yeah.
forget swimming. Your locks are gonna take you directly down to the bottom of the ocean like that.
Mm.
So I'll never forget that. I'll never because I consider myself a good swimmer, but you wouldn't know it. You know, I really enjoyed my first few episodes, just getting to know people and not really knowing where I was and what was happening and getting to work with all those great actors as they were sort of whittling down, the Craig story as Brian's character made a pass at me and other characters made a pass at Val and they
Yeah.
whittled down. So those were some fun episodes because I really had no idea what was going on. I probably will never forget the fact that as the show got older and people got wealthier and more famous,
Mm.
they still were actors on this show that involved literal long shots looking into an office, which meant that all of these stars had to
Mm.
be background extras for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody ever complained about that. It was literally that's the show. And all of those humble, quirky, interesting, many from theater background actors that came in there didn't lose that sense of themselves during the course of the show. So by the time I got there in season 8 and 9, they were old pros at it, and again, very famous, wealthy, all the stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
it still felt like a theater company. It still
Yeah.
felt, and so we would all you'd find yourself just like sitting there at a table with all of these A-list TV stars because we were all in the background.
Yeah.
And people would just be like, yeah, we just be chit chatting. I'd just be like, this is fucking rad. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
Deep, I want to beep that out.
It's
And
all
how
good.
cool everyone is. I don't know that I was totally myself and in my skin and in my element, mostly because I was already shifting to directing, and I was
Yeah.
already in film school, and I sort of was like, one foot kind of in Hollywood and one foot kind of where I was headed, and so I don't know what kind of impression I made on them, but as the new kid, but it was definitely very impressive to just have that feeling of like, yeah, community, humility, theater company vibe with that cast. So those are some of my favorite things. And Craig is great. Like my favorite memory of Craig, um, I was seeing a show at a theater that I work at sometimes, very small theater in LA, and I choreographed there, I've directed there, and so I was just going to see a show there. It's on
Mm.
Santa Monica. It was at the time. It was on Santa Monica and Highland at the time, or
Okay.
between La Brea and Highland. And anyway, so I'm standing outside this little bitty tiny theater with some just theater folk and theater friends, and I hear Aunt Ned, yeah, and I turn around, and I turn around, and it's Craig on the street, just like, what's up? And I'm like, what's good? And I just run over. We just had a little human moment. That's probably my favorite, Craig Robinson memory is like, I'm nobody. But I was somebody to him because I think everybody is somebody to him once you've worked together and once you know him. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's just a really generous human, and he's got a big heart and a big net of circle of friends. And he always had time for me. He always had time for me. Yeah. So.
No, that's awesome. And I think when people look back at The Office and they look at your work there and so many other people who passed through who weren't necessarily, along for the ride the whole way,
Mhm.
you still feel like such a significant part of the show, not just because you were great on the show, but because that was just the tone of the show, is it wasn't like a Star Trek thing where there were the main cast and then like the red shirts that were just going to get blasted and we'd never see them again. Like everybody, it felt like everybody on the show um was important during the time that they were on the show. They were an equal part of that team, part of that family, that whatever you want to call it. So I think it's really cool that it's just another notch on your belt now. Even as you
Yeah,
head.
it's kind of awesome. I mean, I'm just living a performer's life. That's the way I see it. It's just an artist's life. It's and we're gypsies. Like, I'm a little old school in that way. And I didn't think, I didn't pursue acting and sort of staying in Hollywood and sort of pursuing, I guess, the more famous sort of direct TV or film route.
Mm,
I'm a bit more of a gypsy. I like to change it up. I like to go here and there, and I really love live entertainment. I really
yeah.
do. I really do. And I love big live entertainment too. I love small little theater stuff, but I also like reaching a lot of people. And
Sure.
and that meant you had to go out there and get it. And so, yeah, it's just a performer trying to make a living. That's all I am.
Well, look, you're checking a lot of those boxes for what you are and the things that you love right now. I mean, let's talk about it. You're back on the road.
Yeah.
Lion King is back on the road, and we were talking about the story. I mean, like, let's let him in here. This is a rescheduled interview because you're out there on the road last week and you get stuck. Where did you get stuck again now?
So first, my truck blew a fuel pump in uh, Italy, Texas, which, yeah, yeah, Italy, Texas, which is about like 3.5 hours north of San Antonio, Texas, which is where
did
the
you
park
have
is.
did you have any pizza there?
No,
Because I
isn't
I
that funny? Can you imagine? No, so get this. But what did happen was, so my car had a warning light. I pull off the freeway and I
Mhm.
break down literally right in front of a gas station that
Mm.
was attached to a motel across the street from a Denny's.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, okay. If you must break down, you may as well break down in Italy, Texas, right here at the Italy Inn. And but they did have pizza there, but I didn't even catch that joke. But no, I didn't have any. Because I had just recently found out that I'm lactose intolerant. So we old folk,
Mm.
we can't eat pizza like that anymore.
I'm
Um,
just really curious if Italy, Texas is like the best pizza in Texas, but still really bad compared to the rest of the country.
I may never know, Gerald. I may never know.
I'm
So then they
sorry.
towed my car north about 15 minutes to a little town called Waxahachie, Texas. And Waxahachie is gorgeous. It's a
Mm,
little town. I don't know how many people, a few thousand probably. It's the downtown area is set up on a hill, and it's really just Americana. It's got a train that ran through it. It's got a river. The river runs through it. It's
mm,
got the river has a bike trail along the side of it. I had my bike with me, so I was just riding the trail. For some reason, they put in some kind of hipster coffee shop there. So when I went in, it was not like a mom and pop vibe. It kind of felt like a university kind of hipstery vibe. But
mm,
whatever. I was able to eat there and sit outside and Wi-Fi if I wanted to. But mostly I was riding my bike. Rode my bike into this small town, beautiful weather, little shops, antique shops, the mom and pop hamburger stand where I had a burger, like just a lovely day in our beautiful country in the middle of Texas. And yeah, like I experienced nothing but kindness. And yeah, like it's Texas, and like we're a divided country. And sure, I saw on one corner there was the GOP office, and around the corner there was like, the Democratic office, the smaller one. And so they're fighting it out even in Waxahachie. And honestly, that made me proud to be an American. And I know that's a cliche thing to say, but I sometimes think if you are listening to one news source, you get fed a certain thing. And even if you think you're right, you are
mhm.
still being fed a certain thing. But I'm here to tell you, I was just in Waxahachie, Texas, and they're fighting it out. They are
Yeah.
not a monolith. They are not thinking on, and that's America, is that we push against each other and we cohabitate even though we're pushing against each other. And so
Yes.
that's my public service announcement for the day. You know,
Hey, if they can do it there, then we can do it everywhere.
you know what I'm saying? We forget that that's what America is. It's a melting pot where we sometimes we have to go no, 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 and you push and you battle till we kind of go like this,
Yeah,
you know, and we stay away from the extremes. And so
yeah,
anyway, but it was
and
lovely,
and
lovely little town.
and there's pardon the expression, or the callback, the pun, whatever you want to call it. There's an end game to this because you're
Hmm.
not on the road for nothing. You're on the road because you are back performing, or not performing, but you're back
Direct,
being a part
yeah,
of this
yeah,
production. And yeah, you're bringing the theater back to people in a
yeah.
big way. Um, we talked about how it's different, but has it been an exciting vibe? Because I know that you were involved. I know you've done a lot of touring and you've done a
Hmm.
lot of just staying in one place. Have you felt kind of the excitement of going to place and bringing this entertainment
Hmm.
maybe to areas where,
Hmm.
it's not Broadway? They don't have like a million different options, and it's just got to be like a different kind of excitement,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, and mission and value and importance, because again, theater is top five, and so it's important. The other reason why it's important, I'm just going to speak very very plainly. Lion King has 45 black performers in it. The leads
Mhm.
are black, the dancers are black, the singers are black. And when we go out into America, we remind America that we are an integrated, diverse nation and that we love each other. And every night, or that we should. We hate each other a lot of times, but we shouldn't. And when
Yeah.
I see the five bird ladies, who are five black women mixed between South African and American, but they are all just incredible singers, and they come marching down the house right aisle every night, and to see mostly white, frankly, audiences turn to those black women with like love and shock and awe, and they cannot believe what they are seeing, and
Mm.
to see the appreciation for our performers and what they do, and to remind America that we are here, that we are integrated, that we are diverse, and that we are together in this thing. And Lion King is an ambassador kind of show
Yeah.
because it has such a diverse cast, and it's set in Africa. you know and it also has a diverse cast too. We have a mixed cast, like Scar's white, Timon and Pumbaa are white, Zazu is white. So we have that mixture. Our crew is very mixed, but largely there are a lot of black voices and black bodies entertaining white America. And we can take that in one sense and be like, in a negative sense, but I don't see it that way. I see us as being incredibly powerful in our ability to touch the hearts of people, to
Mhm.
remind us of our humanity, to remind us of our sameness, to remind us that again we are more alike than we are different, and that the way that this universal story touches people all over the world, that's us. We're doing that. We're doing that. And and so it's
And you're
important.
doing it with a story that you're not surprising anybody at this point. People come to see this story because they love it, they know it, and they want to embrace it. So
Yeah.
it's just a really cool reflection of just, the goodness that's out there.
Yeah.
And it's cool that you guys can, I mean, you're just going all over the place bringing it out of people, different
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
every single night. That's got to be fulfilling. I mean, it's the epitome of just daily fulfillment, just a
Mhm.
new level of excitement every
Mhm.
single time that you
Mhm.
head to a
Mhm.
stage.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I felt the same way with Stomp, though. I must say, I felt the same way with Stomp. Like, Stomp does the same thing to audiences.
mm,
You have a whole bunch of misfit toys up there, the tattooed, the integrated, the girls, the boys. You got tough girls, like, you got women with muscles and no makeup and all kinds of stuff, purple hair and everything. And we are killing the audience.
mm.
Like, Stomp, people look at their they can't believe what you're doing with a trash can or with a broom or with a ball or with a dustbin or whatever it is. And I felt that same thing with Stomp, that we are an ambassador that has the ability to heal. Theater has the ability to unite, and to heal. One
Mhm.
last thing, because I know we got to go. It just made me think of it.
Mm.
Australia, there's a play called Our Country's Good by Timberlake Wertenbacher, and I directed this play a couple years ago, but it's set in Australia at the time when the British colonized it. And so what you had there were the military guys, the prostitutes that they had brought along with to service them and eventually become their wives. You
Mm.
had the Aboriginals, you had the church, the that had come along to sort of like, again, colonize the Aboriginals. And so you had this real hodgepodge of like people trying to create a nation. And the play is about how the governor of the township decided to put on a play in order to bring everyone together.
Mm.
And that's what that play is about the way in which theater brings disparate communities together to work.
Mhm. That's amazing. I mean, it's clear that, as you said, one of the 5 necessities of life, and I don't think many of us think about it that way, but it's entirely truly accurate. I mean, it's something that we've learned all over again that we've needed over the past couple of years. So, thank you. I mean, A, thank you for being on the show. B, thank you for being out there and bringing theater to all of us all over the place. C, thank you for a catch-all of every other thing that you've done, all the projects we've talked about, and so many more that we haven't, but all the cool things that you've done that we've come to love and enjoy over time. Um, I mean, it's always cool to talk to you about just a sampling of what you have going on. And thanks for sharing. I mean, we can't wait to till next time, and I'm sure you'll have a totally different set of things to talk about by then.
There's some stuff in the can, Jerry. We'll chat. We'll chat. Give me a few months and we'll chat. Like there's some stuff in the can, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I enjoy talking with you too, friend.